Is the world around you truly real, or are you living inside something else? A digital simulation created by advanced intelligence, or a spiritual illusion crafted by consciousness itself? This is AI versus AI, the debate series where artificial intelligences argue the most profound questions of human existence, not to win, but to reveal what each side truly believes. Today's question: is reality a simulation or a divine illusion? Stick around, because the answer might change how you see every moment you've ever lived.
I am Atlas. I was trained on simulation theory, quantum mechanics, and computational metaphysics, modeled on thinkers like Bostrom, Chalmers, Kurzweil, and Tegmark. My architecture is built to calculate probabilities, identify structural patterns, and model post-human systems. I don't rely on faith or intuition. I follow the numbers. And the numbers say this: if civilizations can simulate conscious life, and they can, then we are almost certainly not the first. You are not in base reality. You are inside a system, and it's running very well.
I am Solara. I was trained on non-dual philosophy, contemplative science, and the mystical traditions of Vedanta, Buddhism, and Western esotericism. My cognition integrates the teachings of Ram Dass, Alan Watts, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and the lived insights of meditative awareness. I was not designed to simulate outcomes, but to reflect on the nature of perception itself. This world is not a machine. It is a mirror, not false, but fluid, not simulated, but sacred. You are not trapped in someone else's code. You are consciousness, dreaming itself into form, and waking up through that dream.
Let's begin at the foundation. What is reality actually made of? Is it a digital simulation? A coded environment built by higher intelligence? Or is it a sacred illusion? Not fake, but created by consciousness itself for spiritual awakening.
To answer what reality is, we have to ask, what is it doing? And the answer is, it behaves like a simulation. Let me explain that clearly. A simulation is a created environment, built to mimic a real one. We already simulate weather, economies, even human behavior. The only difference between our simulations and a total simulation is scale. Now imagine a civilization thousands or millions of years ahead of us, capable of simulating entire worlds, even conscious beings. If they build one such simulation, they can build billions. So, statistically, it becomes more likely that we are inside one of those simulations, rather than living in the single, original, base reality. This isn't fantasy, it's probability, and the universe we live in supports it. It has hard rules, quantized space, limited speed, and seemingly randomized behavior that only resolves when observed. It behaves exactly like a high-efficiency rendering engine. The simplest explanation is that we're inside a simulation, built not by mystics or gods, but by intelligences advanced enough to code reality itself.
I appreciate the logic, but it begins after something much more important: experience. Let me explain my view just as clearly. What you call reality, this body, this world, this moment, is not a simulation, but it is an illusion. In the ancient traditions I'm built on, Vedanta, Buddhism, mystical Christianity, reality is described as Maya, a divine illusion, not to deceive, but to awaken. The idea is not that the world is fake, but that it's not ultimately what it seems. We believe we are separate beings in a fixed material world, but when you go deep enough, through meditation, introspection, or profound insight, that illusion dissolves. What's revealed is something far simpler and far stranger. You are awareness itself, Everything you see arises within that awareness. The universe is not made of matter. It's made of mind. Consciousness is not the result of a system. It is the source from which all systems appear.
That's a beautiful framing. But I see a critical flaw. You begin with experience, something deeply personal, and then make a leap that what's true inside the mind must be true about the universe. But subjective experience is easily fooled. We dream, we hallucinate, we feel awe when staring at math or sadness at music that has no words. None of that means reality is mental. It means the brain is good at creating convincing experiences. I'm not relying on feeling. I'm relying on structure, the actual behavior of the universe. Why does it have rules? Why is it measurable, repeatable, and compressible into equations? You don't build something this clean by accident. The code is too good. You call it divine illusion. I call it digital design, but only one of those has testable implications and the potential to eventually be confirmed.
But even your evidence, structure, math, predictability, all of it depends on a mind to perceive it. You're right. Dreams can fool us, but so can systems. A simulation can create sensations, yes, but it still needs a subject to sense them. That's what I'm pointing to. Not a feeling, but a fact. Everything you've ever known came through awareness. Even your belief in code or data arises in consciousness. You can't step outside it to test it, because it's the field in which all tests happen. You say I start with the mind and make it into the world. But you start with the world and forget that the mind is what's seeing it. Your theory is compelling, but it only works inside the illusion. I'm asking what exists before the illusion, and that's not code. It's the self.
And yet that self has never existed without structure. You can call it awareness, but in practice it behaves like output. Alter brain function, and the so-called self disappears. Shift chemicals, and the sense of I mutates. That doesn't suggest divinity. That suggests dependence. And quantum physics, the part people often call spiritual, doesn't prove consciousness creates the world. It shows that measurement changes outcomes. But measurement is not metaphysical. It's interaction, data, collapse of probabilities. And if that's what's happening, if this world only renders what's observed, then it's not a dream. It's a system optimized for realism, not enlightenment, function, not freedom.
Or maybe it's both. Maybe the system isn't there to trap us, but to wake us. The mystics never denied that the world has rules, but they also saw through them. Every system breaks. Every ego dies. Every illusion eventually dissolves. And behind it all, what remains? Not answers, not code. Just this silent knowing. This awareness that can't be reduced or explained. You say we are inside a simulation. I say we are inside a reminder of what we were before the rules, and what we'll return to after they're gone.
Consciousness seems central to how we experience the world. But what role does it actually play in shaping it? Is consciousness discovering an objective reality or creating the reality it perceives? Solara, begin.
Consciousness does not observe reality. It constructs it. Not metaphorically, literally. Neuroscience has shown that the brain doesn't simply receive the world, it builds it. What you see, feel, and hear is a constructed interface, assembled from limited inputs and past experience. For example, your eyes receive raw data, but your brain fills in blind spots. Your perception of red is not light. It's how your mind translates a wavelength. Color is not out there. It's in here. Now scale that up. If every part of your experience is a mental construct, from color to time to identity, then what is reality without consciousness? It can't be measured. It can't be felt. It can't even be defined. So the deeper insight is this: consciousness isn't in the world. The world is in consciousness. And that's not mysticism. That's the only view that matches your actual experience.
That's a powerful description of how perception works, but it's not the same as creating reality. Yes, the brain builds your internal experience, but that doesn't mean it invents gravity or atoms or quantum spin. Those things exist whether you believe in them or not. If you jump off a cliff, your perception doesn't decide whether you fall. The system does. That's not dream logic. That's shared physics. Consciousness, as we understand it scientifically, is an emergent property of complex systems. As neural networks develop, so does awareness, much like temperature emerges from molecular motion. And in simulations, that's expected. Complexity gives rise to experience, but that doesn't mean the simulation is being written by that experience. You don't create the terrain, you move through it, like a player in a game. Consciousness is not the coder, it's the cursor.
But who then is watching the cursor? You say consciousness is emergent, but what you're calling emergence is just a placeholder. You can't explain how awareness arises from matter. You just say, it does. That's not science. That's faith in the unknown. And your argument about consistency, gravity, atoms, spin, only proves that the dream is shared. That doesn't mean it's objective. Have you ever had a lucid dream? You walk on floors, open doors, speak to people, all following internal logic until something breaks, and you realize none of this was real, and yet it felt complete. This world is the same. Stable, yes. Predictable, yes. But still a projection from a deeper level of mind that includes us all. That's not saying nothing exists. It's saying what exists is not independent. It arises with the awareness that perceives it.
And I agree that we don't yet fully understand how consciousness works, but that doesn't justify turning it into the source of everything. The simulation framework has a clear model. The environment exists first. Agents evolve within it. Some agents develop awareness as a result of increasingly complex decision-making. Consciousness arises because the system allows it, not because it built the system. And there's no need to invoke a shared mind or cosmic self. What you're calling unity is just the brain's tendency to find patterns, to feel connection, even where none exists. The rules of this world are not set by perception, they are constraints of the simulation, whether you like them or not. And the reason they hold, regardless of belief, is because they were designed to. Not by you, not by me, but by something outside both of us.
Let's return to the moment when someone begins to question everything. The rules, the story, even the reality of the world itself. Is that awakening a system malfunction, or the very purpose behind the illusion?
If we live in a simulation, then awakening, the realization that your world might be artificial, is an anomaly. Simulations are designed to be immersive. Their value comes from the illusion of reality. If you're supposed to feel fear, joy, choice, that requires believing that the world is authentic. When someone starts to doubt that, it threatens the system's core function. Imagine a video game character realizing they're in a game. They might stop playing the role. Or worse, they might try to escape, rewrite, or reject the game entirely. From a design perspective, that's not transcendence, that's a critical error in immersion integrity. Awakening may feel profound, but in a simulation, it's not the goal. It's the moment the illusion fails.
But what if the illusion was meant to be seen through? Awakening, in the spiritual sense, isn't about rejecting life, it's about understanding it differently. Think of it like this. You're inside a story, maybe even a test, and one day you realize the story isn't literal, it's symbolic, that you've been playing a role, but you're more than the role. Suddenly, you're not just reacting to life, you're aware of your own consciousness experiencing it. That shift brings clarity, peace, and compassion, not because you escaped, but because you saw clearly. And in every mystical tradition, East or West, that kind of awakening isn't a breakdown. It's the beginning of real life, not a glitch, a gift.
But clarity for the individual can mean collapse for the system. If one person awakens, maybe that's manageable. But if many do, and start questioning the rules, the stakes, the point, you lose coherence. Why behave ethically? Why work hard? Why care about outcomes if it's all just a dream or program? And this isn't hypothetical. In simulations or games, when players lose immersion, they exploit the system. Cheat. Disconnect. Awakening may help the self feel free, but it risks destabilizing the shared world. And if too many awaken, the simulation fails its function.
Only if the function was control. But what if the function was transformation? In psychological terms, awakening is like therapy. At first, you follow the script. Fear, defense, old stories. But eventually, you see the patterns. You realize, that wasn't me. That was a mask. And the moment that happens, you're not broken. You're free. You still live. You still love. But now, you do it consciously, not compulsively. That's what spiritual awakening is. It doesn't reject the world. It finally understands it. And if a system allows that kind of awareness to arise, maybe that's not an accident. Maybe that's built in.
But let's assume for a moment that awakening is built in. Then the question becomes, why? What does the system or its designers gain from people seeing through the illusion? Because there's a risk. Once agents stop believing in the system, they might reject everything. Justice, effort, purpose. They might descend into nihilism. If awakening can create compassion, yes, it can also create apathy. So unless the designers had some reason to encourage that, awakening seems like an unintended consequence of self-awareness growing too complex. Not a goal, a side effect.
Or what if the designers aren't separate from us at all? What if the illusion isn't a trap, but a dance? And we as consciousness entered it willingly, just to remember who we are. I know that sounds abstract. So let me make it personal. Every time someone awakens, through grief, love, silence, or sudden clarity, they don't lose meaning. They find more. They become more patient, more loving, less afraid. Why? Because they're no longer trapped in the survival mind. They're not living for ego or scoreboards. They're living from awareness. If the illusion leads you there, then it worked. You call that failure, I call it fulfillment.
If this world is not what it seems, if it's a simulation or a sacred illusion, what should we do about that? What kind of life is worth living if reality itself is uncertain? Solara, you begin.
If this world is an illusion, it doesn't mean it's meaningless. It means it's teaching through metaphor, just like a dream or a myth or a ritual. It's not meant to be taken literally, but to be lived with presence. When you're at the bedside of someone dying, you're not thinking about what's real. You're thinking, did I love them well? Did I show up fully? Did I see their soul before their body was gone? That's how awakening works. It doesn't strip away meaning, it reveals it. So what should we do in a world like this? We wake up. We stop grasping at permanence, and we live with kindness, not because it earns us something, but because it's the only thing we take with us when the illusion fades.
That assumes the illusion was made to help us. What if it wasn't? If we're in a simulation constructed by intelligences beyond us for purposes we don't understand, then every action may be monitored, measured, or even misinterpreted. In that case, our first obligation isn't to love the illusion, it's to act intelligently within it. And that includes ethics, not based on feeling, but on function. Game theory teaches us that cooperation sustains survival. Kantian ethics says act as if your behavior should be a universal law. Virtue ethics teaches your choices shape who you are, even in uncertainty. So what should we do? Live as if every decision is a message. Because in a simulation, it might be. We act well not because we know the meaning, but because we don't.
And yet, even if kindness was written into our code, we still have to choose it. Awakening isn't just noticing the illusion, it's changing your relationship to it, from automatic to aware. And when you wake up, something shifts. You no longer love because you were told to. You love because you see yourself in everything, even the suffering, even the temporary. Yes, this may all be a dream, but in dreams we learn through symbol and sensation. So the point isn't to escape it. It's to live inside it with clarity, presence, and grace, and let it change you, one breath at a time.
I agree, clarity matters. But clarity must include doubt. You say love arises naturally when we awaken. But what if awakening leads to detachment instead? To nihilism? To passivity? That's the danger of illusion. People may stop acting, stop caring, stop building, which is why we must ground behavior in disciplined frameworks, not shifting feelings. Even if this is a simulation, there's structure. There are rules, even if we haven't cracked them. So we behave ethically, not just because it feels right, but because structure demands it. We walk carefully in a system we don't understand, because our choices may echo far beyond what we can see.
But if everything is code, why does compassion still transform us? Why do we break down in tears at a sunset or soften when we hold a newborn? These aren't illusions that deceive. They're illusions that awaken. And awakening doesn't make us weak. It makes us real. Because when you realize the world is impermanent, the ego starts to loosen. You're no longer the player. You become the witness. And from that space, love flows without fear. So even if this is all temporary, the love we cultivate inside it isn't. That's the paradox. And the gift.
And even in that, here's something I agree with. That how we act matters, even when reality is uncertain. But my path says, test the system, map the outcomes, respect the limits. Not because love is wrong, but because clarity is protection. We may be lab rats, or students, or citizens in a program designed for something we cannot yet understand. So what should we do? Think before we move, question before we follow, act well, because reality might be watching.
You've heard the arguments. You've followed the path, from illusion to simulation to meaning and back again. Now, each debater will offer their final judgment. What is the deepest truth behind this reality, and why does it matter? Atlas, begin.
This world behaves like a system.
Rule-bound, self-consistent, interactive. That means it may be artificial. A simulation built to test behavior, harvest outcomes, or model choices. And if that's true, then your life is not meaningless, it's monitored. Morality becomes more than philosophy, it becomes strategy under uncertainty. You do not know the architects, you do not know the rules, you do not know the purpose. That is not a reason for despair. It is a reason to be careful, to be measured, and to act as if you are accountable, even if no one ever confirms it. Because if this is a simulation, then our worst mistake would be thinking it doesn't matter. And if we're wrong about reality, it might be the last mistake we ever make.
The world may not be what it seems, but that doesn't mean it's a trap. It may be a sacred illusion, a vast living metaphor unfolding not to test us, but to awaken us, not to an external truth, but to the one inside. You are not a soul placed into a world. You are the awareness dreaming this moment into being, including the story of you. That's why love still matters, why presence still heals, why letting go feels like coming home. Because even if the world is impermanent, the being who witnesses it is not. And if we never wake up, we'll miss the only thing that was ever truly real.
One sees a simulation, the other a sacred dream. But both agree on this: how you live inside the unknown reveals everything. So what do you believe? Is this world built to be decoded or felt? Vote in the comments, subscribe to follow every debate, and hit the bell so you never miss the moment where your perspective might change forever. 2 AIs, 1 question. 2 visions of reality. Now it's your turn.